Alrighty then, I'm gonna go ahead and get started here. So, welcome to Monster a Day, my new art challenge that I'm doing for the month of October. Um, yeah, a monster a day. So this is day number 5 already. So some of the days I'm recording the video and just sharing it on YouTube and then sharing the link to Facebook. Other days I'm trying to come live to you. So today's one of those live days. So Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays I'm coming live on Facebook at 1 p.m. So today I wanted to kind of continue. If you haven't been following along over the weekend, I did a couple, and yesterday I did one where I was doing some painting. So I'm gonna kind of up the game and be drawing, but then also with using a little bit of paint. So if you want to follow along, awesome. So I'd love to see the monsters that you are making. So if you are following along, I would love to see what you're doing. I know some people have posted that they want, they're sharing it with their kids, and their kids or grandkids are doing it, and that's awesome. But I'd love to see what everybody's doing. So you can post them in the comments on this video, or the comments on any of the posts that I've been sharing. You can also tag me in social media, especially on like Instagram, stuff like that. So yeah, I'd love to see what you are doing. So yeah, today we're gonna dive into another monster. I'm gonna do a selfie again. So excuse me, I did that the other day where I started the monster. So it looks like the monster's taking a selfie. It's a up close view of the monster. The head's a little bit bigger, so the body kind of goes out of the frame. So I'm gonna do that, but I'm gonna do a little bit differently than I've done the last couple days. So let's go ahead and switch it over and see what we need, and we'll go ahead and get started. And I can see that my internet's being all wonky. It's like I try to fix stuff and I don't know what's going on. So anyway, I apologize for that. That's becoming a more regular occurrence than I'd really like. So another reason why I do some of the videoing. So yeah, let's go ahead and flip it over. So I've got my 6 by 8 inch piece of mixed media paper, which is great because I'm going to be painting on it today. I've got my pencil and I've got my eraser. I've got my set of, somewhere in here, my black pens. I've got some watercolor. So this is the watercolor that I used yesterday, the core watercolor paints. So I have those, but I have a couple others just in case. So I like the Derwent Inktense paints. They're a good light, fast paint, and I actually have a couple palettes, so that way I have a nice array of color to choose from in my piece here. I'm not going to quite need those yet, so I'll kind of push them out of the way a little bit. I've got some brushes. I did grab a bigger brush because yesterday I felt like I was trying to do too much of it with a little brush. So anyway, so I've got that, and over here off camera I've got my water cup. So but we got start by drawing it. And so yeah, if you're tuning in, I'd love to see where people are from. I love whenever you stop in the comments and say hi. So if you want to go ahead and do that, that's quite awesome. So I'm gonna do like I've started every other time, is starting to draw with my pencil. And so I have my paper this way. So I've done the selfies I've done before are kind of up and down like that. But I think, well, what if I did it this way today? And what I'm thinking is, like, instead of just 2 eyes, what if I had 3 eyes? I don't know. I'm just trying to mix it up a little bit. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do today. So got my pencil, thinking about which side. I kind of always shift my monster off to the side a little bit, so I'm thinking like more on this side, so that there's a little bit of the background over here behind the monster. So 3 eyes. I want to maybe start with that eye that's going to be in the center, and I like to sketch out all right. So there's one eye, and then maybe another eye over here. And like I said, he's got a third eye. Okay. So a little bit different. I haven't done a three-eyed monster in quite a while, especially I don't think I've done this kind of format with a selfie monster before. I want to think about the mouth. maybe rough that in now. Okay, so his mouth goes off that way, and then thinking about his head. So I'm just kind of roughing in the lines and the shapes. Alright, and I can go back in and start to put in the details. So I've got a lot of little sketching marks around the eyes because I was trying to decide how big to make the eyes. And so when I trace it, when I outline it with pen, that's going to, and then I'm going to erase it, that's going to make all those pencil marks disappear. So what I find a lot of times with the pen is I go back and I really solidify my line. So if it's real sketchy and real loose now, I can go back and just make things neater with the pen. So I'm not like super tight right now, like, oh, it's got to be perfect, because I still need to outline it. Okay. So 3 eyes. I can make his lip a little bit bigger over here. I think I want to give him some big flat teeth. I tend to give my monsters an underbite, so the teeth tend to stick up from the bottom of the bottom lip, the bottom part of the jaw. Okay, so I think I'm going to go ahead and give him some horns. Okay, so I have this space to play with, so it's kind of like, what can I do? I'm trying to think, like, well, what can I... Yeah, I'm trying to give it a slightly different shape to the horn than maybe I have in the past. And then, yeah, I like for his arm to be kind of sticking out there. I don't know if I think I want the horn to break the side, to kind of go off. This side there. And, I have room if I wanted to give him like little wings or something there, or spikes. So I'm not really sure. But I'm thinking, let's do something a little different with the horn. So I'm going to kind of think about candy cane type stripes. And then I can also think about if I want to give him spots right now. I think I'm going to hold off with the spots. Maybe I'll do something after I paint him in. So I've got it all sketched out. And then I can take my trusty thin Pitt artist pen. So again, these are by Faber-Castell. They're made in Germany. They're India ink. They're waterproof. They have a high light fastness, which means that they don't fade in light, or at least they don't fade that much in light. So that means that they're going to be pretty permanent. They're not going to lighten up when exposed to sunlight, especially. So if you didn't tune in yesterday, I'll kind of review. I'm going to be painting. And so what I do is just like I do whenever I'm drawing, I outline everything with the pen. But I put in some some of the details. So what I'm going to paint after I erase all the pencil lines. And so I want to have some of the details in there. So if I'm going to do stripes, if I'm going to do spots, those are things I want to have in now. Whereas before, whenever I was just drawing, I waited. And that was because I wasn't adding color. So I could do the outlining and the erasing, and then I could add all the patterns and all the textures with the pen. So I mean, I guess I could do it this way, where I outline all the basic stuff, erase all of the pencil lines, and then put in some of the details before I paint. It's just important that I do it before I paint. But I'm not thickening my lines. I'm not trying to put in all the little tiny details. I just really, since I'm painting, I'm thinking about the color. So if the stripes are going to be different colors, then I need to like have those stripes in now. So like thinking about even his lip, I often like to have the lips a different color. So I want to have that in so I can think about where that's going to be painted. Just kind of debating if I should put some spots in them. I think I'll hold off because I'm thinking I might do something with some texture on it. So just look over, because I'm really good about forgetting something. So look it over. And then carefully erase. So if you don't have paint, you could use other materials. And I'll often use colored pencil or marker. So you might want to mix up the way the kind of the process. So I'm going to erase all my pencil marks. Then I'm going to paint it. I'm going to dry it. And then I'm going to do all my fancy outlining like I've done in previous days. So I'm going to have thick lines and put in patterns and textures, but I do that after I'm done painting. Depending on what material you're using, you might want to do all of the ink first and then do the color. So it's kind of like, it's almost like you're making your own coloring book page. You get everything outlined first, and then it's just a matter of filling it in. So again, that just kind of depends on what material you're using. Because the ink might not draw on top of certain material. So I know the ink is going to go on top of the paint that I'm using. However, if I'm using crayon or if I'm using colored pencil, both of those can be waxy, so it might be a little bit more difficult to draw on top of it with the ink. Okay. So as I was painting yesterday, my paint was a little bit uneven as I was putting it on. So I'm using watercolor paint, water-based paints, and sometimes it can be a little tricky to get the value of it just right, and especially when you're painting in a big area. So I really want to kind of think about the colors that I'm going to use and then where I'm going to put those. And that's why I grabbed a bigger brush today. Yesterday I had a small brush, and I think that was a big part of it, because with a small brush stuff starts to dry, and then it just inevitably turns out a little bit Yeah, it just kind of turns out a little bit more uneven. And then I have to plan. So just like yesterday, if you tuned in, I want to look and decide like, okay, I don't want to paint stuff that's next to each other. So I'm thinking I might start with the sky, like with the background. I call it sky because I'm going to probably paint it blue. So all of this negative space. So I don't want to paint the horn or the monster or the teeth, anything like that next. So I want to like go inside. So the eyes are a good place to go after I do the background. So I'm gonna got my brush, get a lot of water on it, and get a little bit of blue, and then just start painting. So with the background, I don't mind if it's a little bit more uneven. Just because it's a background, you know, it's like it's not supposed to be as smooth. But by using a bigger brush, that should allow me to make the color application a little bit smoother. So if it's a little too dark, just dip my brush in the water to dilute it a little bit, maybe a little bit more. So the nice thing about this brush is that it has long bristles, they're thin, and they come to a point. So, but the brush is called a round, and so the brush is rounded, but then usually they tend to come to a point. And so what that allows me to do is if I press pretty hard, I can get a thick line, and it's easy to fill in bigger areas. But then if I barely touch, I can get a real nice point on the brush and get into some smaller areas, like right here by his tooth. Okay. All right, so the background is wet. It's dry. It's pretty dry up here now, but it's a little wet here, so I want to avoid that. I'm going to switch to my smaller pointed brush, my smaller round brush, and think about what colors I want to use. So I think I'm going to do, I'm not really sure, but I think I want to do red. Let's use this red up here. I know I'm kind of out of this shot here, but just picked up some red. I want it to be pretty dark. Actually, I want it to be a little more water on it. And I want to be careful where I'm putting my fingers. Yesterday, I touched some wet paint, and then I ended up transferring some of the wet paint into areas that I didn't want to. So if I don't fill up the space completely, if I have a little bit of white near the black, that's not going to be a big deal because I'm still going to go back with the ink and make my lines thicker. And so yesterday as I was painting, it's like I felt like it was pretty rough. Just was kind of not very neat. I went outside of the line a lot, but then just using the ink, it made it look so much better because I was able to really get the edges. And I just realized I didn't paint up there. So let's let's rinse out the brush. Oop, too dark. So the background's drying. The rings around the eyes are drying, but they're still kind of wet. So I want to go away from that. So I don't want to paint this in because I just painted that in. This, I could probably be safe down here because that feels pretty dry, but I'm going to let that blue here dry a little bit more. And so I think I'm going to turn to the eyes. And one of the reasons that I wanted to choose this Inktense paint is that I didn't, unfortunately, the core, the QOR, the core paint doesn't have like a real bright green, and this has a nice green in it. I wanted to give him some green eyes. So I mean, I could mix the color if I don't have it, but if I have something that will work, might as well use it. So I'll take care of the pupil in the eyes later whenever I use the ink. Alright, so I've got the eyes in there. Alright, so I think what I want to do is just trying to think what color I want him. I'm thinking yellow. But you know what? I have this yellow orange over here, so I think maybe that's what I'll use. So I want to think about how I'm going to do this. I'm afraid that the red up here might be wet, so I'm not going to do that. And then this blue up here might be wet, but I'm thinking, yeah, that feels pretty dry there. So I'm going to start down here, and then maybe by the time I'm done down here, by the time I get up here, it'll be dry. But the lips, that makes a good spot to stop. So I can paint this in, and hopefully by that time the upper part will be dry. Just making sure that my brush is clean and that this is clean. And then so I realize there's a little spot down here on the corner where there should be a little bit of background, but I missed that. So I'll just let that dry. I'll come back and put it in there. So before it dries, I'm going to try to get a little bit more of the color just to make it a little bit darker. And then I can kind of brush it out. So if I can do that quickly before it dries. And I ended up with a lot of like little air bubbles, so I don't know if you can see like little kind of dark spots, but those are just little air bubbles that get kind of caught up in the paint as I'm painting. So they'll slowly kind of disappear. All right, we'll do the arm over here. So I noticed that I got a little bit of the blue kind of in the arm there, but that's not a big deal. What I want to avoid doing is really painting over it a lot with the yellow orange, because that blue can reactivate, and then it can spread a little bit, maybe spread where I don't want to, and then this yellow orange and the blue will kind of make more of a green or a brownish color, probably more of a green, because this is a lot of yellow in this, so I just kind of want to be careful. Okay. So yesterday I was using a hair dryer a lot, and I'm going to try not to use it so much, because what I find is that the paper tends to be a little bit flatter if I'm not blowing it dry with a hair dryer. I'm going to try to make this a little smoother over here. Okay, so I'm thinking like this red is fairly dry, so I think I can go ahead. I think I'm safe. So what I'm going to try to do is try to keep this paint wet as I paint it around. Now this brush I'm using has bristles that are a little bit better for watercolor, but I don't know if it's specifically a watercolor brush. But it tends to hold a little bit more paint and water than some of the other brushes that I have. So see up here the paint's gotten dry, so that can end kind of lead to some spots. But if there's too much water, I mean, there's just watercolor paint is very unpredictable, and that's why a lot of people don't like it, because they're like, oh, I'm trying to get it perfectly smooth and perfectly even, and they're like, I can't do that. And it's kind of like, well, it's watercolor. It's something that can be really hard to do. But I think it's good for like the monsters, because it is kind of uneven. You know, it's like it's a monster. He's not supposed to have like perfectly smooth fur or skin or whatever's covering his body. So what I'm trying to do now is just add a little bit of darker value. I didn't quite get it dark enough when I first put it in. I want to try to blend it out into the paint. That's why I was really trying to keep it wet, because sometimes when that paint dries, it's hard to really blend the darker value into it. So that darker value is just going to kind of give it a little bit of dimension, make things look a little bit three-dimensional. Okay. So this part here, I want to let it dry before I paint it in. So I want to let that yellow orange dry before I put it in. And it might look, I'm looking at the video, and up here there's like a big spot, but it's not white there. That's the reflection. So that's just the light hitting the water that's on the paper. So don't think like, oh, Eric missed a big spot on his forehead. All right, so I want to do the horn next, and I'm thinking I've got this real light yellow up here out of the frame, and so I'm just gonna actually I think I painted the horn yellow yesterday too. Alright, so dogs are either barking at a delivery person or barking at one of our cats. Alright, so I think while before that dries, I'm going to rinse out my brush. I'm going to pick up, there's a little bit of a kind of a yellowish ochre over here. And I'm just going to put a little bit, maybe a little bit more. Maybe a little too much. Just spread some of that in there, and because it's hard to make that yellow darker because yellow's very light to begin with. Okay. All right, so he's getting there. Just kind of looking. So I'm looking at the mouth, the lips, because I want to paint the lip in next, and I'm feeling like it feels like it's pretty dry. So I want the lip to be just a little bit lighter. So I'm using that same yellowish orange that I use for the rest of the body, but just having a whole lot of water in it. Okay. And while that's all drying, I am going to pick up a little bit of this blue. Oop, too much of this blue. I know it's just a little tiny corner down here. But I want to have a little bit of blue in there. Okay. So kind of wet. I want to paint this in. I think I'm going to paint it red. I should have painted that red from the beginning when I did the eyes, but I just didn't think of it. Actually, I think it was because the sky wasn't dry. But I'm looking, I can see a little bit of moisture, so I am going to go ahead and use my hair dryer. I was kind of hoping not to, but it's staying pretty flat because it's drying more naturally. But when I hit it with the hair dryer, the water dries very quickly, and what happens is the paper fibers tend to shrink very quickly, and that's what causes it to really wrinkle. But I want to go ahead and finish this up. So actually, you know what? I just thought of something. Like there's one thing I haven't painted, and so maybe whenever I paint that, and that's the inside ring around these eyes. It's a little small, and that brush, if I use the very tip of it, I don't think I have any super small, extra fine brushes, but that has a fairly good tip on it. And so if I get a little bit of pink, kind of a fuchsia color, and then So what I'm trying to do whenever it gets real thin, when that space gets real thin, I just try to barely touch the tip of the brush. Now I have a problem up here where I got a little bit of red in it. Alright, so what I did is just paint over it, and it kind of picked up some of that red. It kind of reactivated it, but it made it a little too dark. So let's go ahead and try to spread that out. Alright, just kind of hides it. It's kind of funny. I feel with this guy, like I feel like a little bit more confident just because I painted yesterday. Yesterday I didn't. I mean, the paint came out very rough looking, especially in the monster's head, and I liked it. I mean, I liked how it turned out. I liked that monster, but the painting I wasn't too thrilled with, and I think part of it was just I haven't really painted like this. I mean, I use paint all the time. And I was just looking up and it's like, oh, looks like my internet's failing. So anyway, yeah, so I was saying that today I just feel a little bit more confident. And I think it's just since I don't paint like this all the time, even though I use paint like this all the time, I don't use it in this manner. I don't use this technique where I'm kind of like filling in, kind of that coloring book kind of idea. But yeah, so I feel like this guy's turning out, at least the paint wise, is turning out a little bit better. His horn's still a little wet there, so I'm gonna go ahead and hit it with my hair dryer. Go ahead and try to dry up most of it. Actually, you know what? I'm going to hold off because I need to paint this. So I don't know if you can see, but it's like it's gotten real curly. So somebody in the comments, nice thing about using the hairdryer, it gives me time to check the comments. But somebody had asked about what paper I'm using, and I'll show you. So it's the same paper I've been using. It's the Strathmore Mixed Media 400 series. It's probably my favorite paper, and it's the paper that I used all of September for my 30-day art challenge, and I cut up little squares. It's a 140-pound paper, so it's a pretty thick paper, but it does buckle a little bit, and especially if I'm using the hairdryer. So that is something that, especially when you're using a thinner paper, even though this paper is not super thin, it's a little bit thinner than some of the other papers. There's some watercolor papers and some mixed media papers that are 300 pounds. So, more than double the thickness. And they curl a little bit, but they don't really buckle too much. This paper can curl and buckle a little bit. But when you use the hairdryer, it speeds it up, and it can curl worse than if you just left it dry on its own. Because again, that you're drying the water out, but the fibers of the paper that was holding all that water, that kind of shrinks. And so since it's on this side, all the water fibers on this side start to shrink, and then it really starts to kind of curl. So anyway, so that's wet. Let me go ahead. I am going to hit it with a hairdryer just to speed it up because I want to go ahead and use the ink on it. right, so I don't know if you can actually see me now because I just checked my phone and everything looks like it's... I have no idea. Let's try this again. Um, gotta love this. All right, I just want to... I have a feeling this is just going to mess stuff up. All right. I hope that fixes everything. I was just kind of in the middle of stuff. My internet, of course, has decided to be a big thing. Yeah, it's just my internet is decided not to work too well today. So if this is just kind of getting messed up, you can always tune in I'm recording this on my computer and I will put it up on YouTube. But yeah, it's being bad. Anyway, so I dried it with the hair dryer and then yeah, so I can okay. I'm still here. Good. It's so I can dry it with the hair dryer and then I can turn it over and dry it and use the hair dryer. But what I find better is if I take my paintbrush and paint the back of it. So what that does is that it saturates the back. And then I can dry it. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. It's like I have a little indicator that says that like how strong the connection is, and it's been in the red and the orange for the last few minutes. So, oops. Anyway, so it's gotten real curled now, but I just take my hair dryer and dry it. Yeah, having some more technical difficulties. All right, so hopefully, sorry about technical difficulties, and we're back down. Yeah, this is just, I have no idea. It's just popping back and forth. My internet is really not working out today, so I do apologize. But if you can still hear me and see me, I'm gonna be. You can always check this out. I'll put it on YouTube a little bit later. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and press on so I can finish recording this. Just a few more minutes, but so I dried it on the back, and that helped kind of flatten it out a little bit. I can always iron it. I can always do some other stuff to it as well. So yeah. So anyway, so I'm gonna just use my pen now, and this is the thicker pen, and I'm gonna go ahead and outline. So like using this thick pen, it just really gets the line there pretty fast. It just really helps me clean up the edges. And just helps bring everything together. But it just really helps me cover up where I may have gotten some paint where I didn't want to. Okay. I'm sorry for all the technical glitches and stuff, but I'm gonna go ahead and, like I said, just keep going through it, and I'll have the clean version on YouTube. But somebody had asked about the paper that I have. So I have a PDF that people can download, and I posted about it the other day. I think it was on Thursday when I started all this. So it's a little Monster Maker workshop sheet that I have, and I posted it as images just so that people could see it. And then there's a link. So in that post, there's a link, and that should take you to the PDF. And that PDF is hosted on my website, and so you should be able to get to it. And there's nothing that prevents you from downloading and saving it. So that way you can use that. And that's just a handout that I have always used with students. So adult students, kid students. And so feel free to use it for yourself. If you're a teacher, feel free to use it with your students. If you want to use it with family members, with kids and grandkids, that's fine too. So I like using this thin pen even to kind of fill in the pupils, just because I think I feel like I have more control over it. And so the thinner lines, I just have more control, I feel. And if I use that fatter, thicker pen, I feel like I might accidentally fill the entire pupil in and maybe make that little reflection a little bit too small. Put a little bit of detail in his teeth. Okay. So if I had more time, if I wasn't dealing with all the buggy internet issues, I might add some more details. But I think he is looking pretty good, and I like how he's balanced. I like how he's here, and then there's some space over there. So I think it turned out pretty well. I'm happy with it. Not happy with my internet right now, but that's all right. So I'm gonna go ahead and sign that, and say this one's done. All right, so several of you still sticking with me. I really appreciate that. Yeah, internet is really kind of wonky, and I don't know if it's because of around here everyone's doing online schooling, distance learning now. So I don't know if that has something to do with it. Whether or not my internet provider's just having issues, I have no idea. But that's the beautiful thing of technology. You know, it's like it works until it doesn't, and but if it's something where you want to see it again, like I said, I've got I'll upload this to YouTube, and then it'll be a clean version because I record a version to my computer, so it gets what's my computer seeing, not necessarily what the internet's seeing. So yeah, so I really appreciate you staying here and working. Really appreciate you being here, and I'll be back. Well, I won't be live tomorrow. If I get a chance, I'll record one, and I always put those on YouTube and then share them on Facebook. So if you want to, I'm not sure when I'm going to get to do that. The reason is that I do different things Tuesdays and Thursdays, so that's why I'm not live streaming now, and so might not be until the evening that I can get it recorded and up. But I am gonna. I'm trying to record them at least every day, and so then that way we'll have 31 different monsters and 31 different videos to go with it. But anyway, I really appreciate you staying through all of the glitches and all the internet issues, and really appreciate it. So thank you so much. And if you got any questions, pop them into the comments. I always try to go back and read the comments and respond to them, even if I've responded to them during the video, especially like today because it's all jittery and jumpy and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And as always, happy creating.